many years, the orchestra was, according to the contract, bound to give notice of any firing of any player by September 15th. It also said that the September 15th date would be the date that any man in the orchestra would have to give notice to the orchestra of his decision to leave. So, in an effort to protect themselves, the men in a very recent trade agreement had pushed for and succeeded in getting an extension of that, but we gave notice of our intention to resign from the orchestra on January 15th, when by the new trade agreement, it had to be given by September 15th. So we were told, we can't leave. We said we're leaving. We were in arrears giving notice. We thought it was okay, so we announced it in the New York Times and other places. The AP picked it up. Wall Street Journal picked it up. 4 members of the famed Philadelphia Orchestra are leaving. The orchestra put out a news release. 4 members of the Philadelphia Orchestra are under contract and are not leaving. So we were front page, by the way. Lead article, the Strikers and the Philadelphia Quartet. We shared the front page for the issue of self-expression. Then Time magazine picked it up with a big 2-page article and under the picture saying, "Songbirds fleeing from the cage." Wonderful statement. And we were songbirds fleeing, trying to flee. And the orchestra was not seemingly going to let us do it. They sued the Board of Regents of the state of Washington, the president of the University of Washington, the provost, Saul Katz, the dean of the music school, Bill Bergsma, for enticing us away under contract. And the lawsuit was joined. They got a judge in Philadelphia to rule that we were not to play or engage in any activity relating to music during the unfilled period of the contract, the year to come. So we were under the judge's order, violation of which would be jail, contempt of court. So I called Saul Katz out at the university. I said, "Saul, you don't realize what's going on with these guys. They're going to make a lot of difficulty for you on this issue of hiring us." And he said famously, "Alan, we raid Harvard, we raid Yale, we'll raid the Philadelphia Orchestra. Don't worry about it." And I said to him, "You're not dealing with Harvard now, you're dealing with old WASP money that runs the show in Philadelphia. They won't let go of this thing." And the lawsuits continued. The injunctions stayed in force against us. People were already trying from Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Chicago to find out about the openings that they read about. And they were told there are no openings. Orchestra was playing complete hardball. That wasn't enough for me, so I drove down on the Schuylkill Expressway that night, determined to say to the management that you cannot make me play my instrument against my will. So I drove home. I started to feel a lot of adrenaline halfway home when I realized what I was contemplating doing. By the time I got to Academy of Music, I had the shakes just from an excess of adrenaline. Nobody knew what I had in my mind. My intention was to serve notice on Normandy personally that I don't play under duress. So my partner was Joseph De Pasquale, and I sat down in a chair 10 minutes before the concert was to start. And I said, Joe, I've got something to warn you about. Some things are going to take place tonight, which will make you uncomfortable. But I just want you to know it's nothing personal. But you will be affected by it. He said, what are you talking about? Wait and see. You've been warned. Well, he gets on the podium and gives the downbeat for a piece called Gli Uccelli, The Birds, by Respighi. And I put my plan into work. I came crashing in way ahead of his downbeat with a huge sound, way before the viola section was to enter. It was heard all over the orchestra stage and all over the audience, Academy of Music. Alan Iglitzin alone with an ugly chord saying, okay, you're not letting me go for my dream. This is what you get from me. And this is all you get. Joe was so perplexed that he didn't enter when he was supposed to, which meant that the 9 violists behind in the section wouldn't enter because if Principal Stan doesn't play, I'm not playing at this point. I'm holding my viola on my lap. So it was a musical nightmare that I caused single-handedly the first 10, 15 minutes of the Birds, and everybody could hear this. It was a mess. So that was how I sent my message. They sent it through the courts, and I sent it through playing less than my best, to say the least. No obvious repercussions. Nobody talked to me until I started to continue that behavior. I did again in a recording session that next week in Beethoven's 6th. I waited until he almost had a take, and we're ready to wrap up the recording session, and then I knew just where a silence would be, and I crashed in, wrecked the recording session. Then Mason Jones came over to me and said, Alan, you have to desist in this behavior. I said, no, you have to desist. Tell us that we can go, and you'll have the whole Alan. He says, you're not going. You keep this up. We'll see to it that you're blackballed in every orchestra and every university in the United States. I went home and started painting the house because I was ready to go. And came in and did another recording session, messed it up. And Mason came over to me and tried to talk me down. And said, no, you have to go home now. You can't come back to this session. I said, I want to be paid for the session. I'm in the orchestra. You have to pay me. We'll pay you for the session, but we don't want you on the stage till you cool down. I said, Mason, I'm not going to cool down until you say you're free to go. He normally was having a fit. He didn't know what to do. Give a downbeat and I play on the wrong place. Created so much tension. And Charlie wasn't doing anything. He came to me and said, Alan, I appreciate what you're doing. I admire it. I can't do anything like that. And Irv said nothing, just sat quietly. And eventually Vida came to me and she said, Alan, I can't take this heat. Management brought her in to say that she was being led astray by the bad boy, Alan. Not to listen to me. She had a lot of loyalty to the orchestra, of course, being a different person than I was, obviously. So I thought to myself, well, I'll lay off. For Vida's sake, I'll lay off it for a while. So we went to the South American tour. They moved me off the first stand, stuck me in the back at the last stand, just to have me less capable of causing trouble. It's not as noticeable what you do on the last stand in front of the trombones as what you do on the first stand. And we get to Mexico City, and I'd been cooling it for a while. And I thought, well, I had to recognize Vida's discomfort about this thing, but now I am not fighting them. I've given away my tool. My tool was wrecking my services in such a way that it wrecked their performances. I'm going back to show them a thing or two. So it's time to play the national anthem. Before huge thousands of people out there. So I, instead of facing Normandy with the rest of the viola section, turned my back fully to the podium and the audience thereby, faced my buddies in the trombone section, like 2 inches from the bells of the trombone and the horns, And a few minutes into intermission, Mason Jones came over to me and said, "Well, Alan, you're fired. We have to pay your airfare back, but you're fired now. You're no longer a member of the Philadelphia Orchestra." My first wife, Lynn, had gone to the concert, as she always did, with the symphony wives who came along on the tour. So they all went up to the balcony for the second half of the concert. There's nobody in my seat. It's empty. She couldn't figure out what the devil happened. Where's Alan? So we met in the hotel room later. I called the car rental agency and got a rental for a hotel in Acapulco, rented a V-dub. And Lynn and I, the next morning, drove down to Acapulco for a Mexico vacation. I was a free man, could do anything I want in this world, never went back with the orchestra.